What's up, everybody? We're here on another episode from the Gutter to Greatness. And as always, bringing greatness to you. I have greatness. I've known this brother for quite a long time, and he's going to get a chance to tell us his Gutter to Greatness story today. There's so much to learn for. This brother is so accomplished. Dr. Jason B. Willis, we're from the same area. So, we definitely understand each other's struggles. So I can't wait to get him on here, dig into it. And I'm going to let him talk about himself a little bit in a minute. So Dr. Willis, Jason, if you could, man, I always start with this. Tell everybody what you do currently and why should anybody care? So why should anybody really give a hootenanny?
Yeah. Well, first, before the hootenannies and all that, I want to say I definitely appreciate you this time on this stage that we'll share. We go back. We're also really concerned and focused on the vision that we'll have progressively moving forward. And so I'm always rooting for you and in your corner. And I'm really excited to be on this podcast now, spending some time. I think first and foremost, I'm a father. And so if you can't get down with that, that's a tough thing. I really take an immense amount of pride and joy in doing the things that are meaningful and that motivate me, and that's just being a good representation of my last name by using my first. I don't. My parents died early. My mom at 26, my dad at 36, and so I really felt that energy pass and really feel it. My priority, my responsibility, my duty to be a father first. And part of that is certainly the field and the paradigm of education that I work in. But I'm probably most proud of just being a girl dad.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Talk about what do you do for work?
Currently I'm a CEO of Willis Community Consulting. I was down at the University of the District of Columbia. I was blessed to have an opportunity to not only create, but also direct and facilitate only violence prevention certification in the country, the HBCU. And so to be able to take something boardroom thought, and I wasn't even in that boardroom, I'm attached as a program that had college accreditations for individuals that may have even graduated high school, but certainly were involved in violence prevention and intervention work was a blessing. And to be able to create the curriculum and be acknowledged on a bunch of fronts, including a White House paper as the program that had the most amount of trajectory that kind of wasn't in, the bureaucratic norm of things down in the DC area, knowing kind of the politics of what's going on. So just been really, really cool to be able to transition some of my skill sets, the things that I do well, my field of education and my life's work.
We seem to have lost Brother Willis and his connection. I'm sure it will come back to us as we are working.
Can you hear me?
Here. Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, we got you, man. What you got? Cricket internet over there?
Nah, I got cricket phone calls coming in, bro. As soon as I get a call, it drops you and wants to pick them up, even if I silence them. It's like
all right, now we on the Gutter to Greatness, so we keep it real here.
Listen, no shade on cricket. We don't want no problem.
I got cricket too. That's why I'm joking.
You have a flip phone.
No, I do. I got cricket too. But what I did tell this brother, and so it's just like our people, y'all. So as he's listening, it says in the description that I know he didn't read. It says, and this is one of the most well-read brothers I will ever.
Oh, I know. I can tell you exactly what it says. It says, please use a desktop.
Yes, a desktop or a laptop. Do not use your phone. So what you might want to do is put it on airplane mode. If you put it on airplane mode as we go through this and use your Wi-Fi, that way it won't kill the internet.
The mojo and the mystique. Yeah.
No, that's all right, brother. Hey, man, we all, I know how it is. I just need brothers to sometimes listen, man. Come on, we trying to.
It's Biggie. I hear Biggie in the background. You got that Biggie going. That's what it is.
It's all good. But as we continue the dialogue here,
you do got the music in the background, right?
And nope, it's not being heard on my end.
You're saying,
So
yeah, great.
so on my end, it's not. As we were saying, Dr. Willis, um, tell me a little bit more about, you know, the work that you did, and how has that made some changes and a difference for folks? Because I think that's going to be the why on how somebody can identify, and why do they care about the work that Jason Willis has done.
Well, I mean, across multiple fields, they should care about the work that I've done. The one thing that's unique about kind of my background and past is, you know, just the multiple disciplines that I've studied. I have degrees in sociology, African American studies. Um, I have degrees in education K through 12 with specialties in special education, and I have a PhD in education administration and supervision. The violence prevention and intervention work really comes from an amalgam of everything that I've done, but really a focus on marginalized communities um, and the things that are germane to their experience. And so with that violence prevention, and all of those agencies and actors that are a part of that process uh, really create a very unique cauldron for cities across America that it has a historical precedence and a contemporary precedence that we hope doesn't continuously evolve into problematic things for our people in the communities and in the future. And so we're really trying to attack, and in my work, I believe that it's four main reasons why violence happens in communities. Number one is Sean McKay's social disorganization, 1974, and they really go through great lengths to explain and express all of those details and large scale systems that impact social disorganization. I think from there, Mertens did a really good job with anomie and strain, and talked about what happens when people feel strains and how they react and create countercultures. And our counterculture in our community is really aligned with Elijah Anderson 1999 Code of the
Code of
Streets.
Streets.
And it's really important that you recognize in Code of the Streets that the only um, action that is acceptable,
Survival of the
it,
fittest.
the only action that's acceptable to regulate survival of the fittest is violence. And so if there's no other thing, right? And so if people feel as if there's no other way to solve discrepancies, problems, issues of respect, a lot of our young people are wearing respect as if it's a coat, um, something you can take on and take off, something that has an immense amount of value. Um, Based on things that we have been kind of capitulated to value. And so, our music is Boom 808. It unlocks the chi and the chakra of violence in your brain, right? If we're talking about sound therapy, um, there's just so many different ways that as human beings, we are so much the same. And in these moments, especially when violence and critical violent incidents occur, we couldn't feel even more distant from each other. The last piece of what I believe is kind of the four natural theories that serve as a I don't know, a bedline, right, for the way in which violence surfaces in our communities is life course theory. Just recognizes that there's so many ways that people might be in the red in their life and feel that things are problematic, but through special levels of attention, really acute scaffolds, um, people can be brought to the green, and then they can maintain a track of being on that. And we know many of folks that have kind of done the roads through the concrete and been able to usurp um, their communities, sometimes troubled families, because they're able to kind of catch on to and navigate towards things that are going to have a net benefit for them in the long haul. And so
Right.
we just try to steer folks kind of in that way, and allow them to understand it, whoever they are, right? So I think the original question that you asked was, what makes me and my program and the things that I think about more unique, and why should anybody care? And I think that the most important reason is that it allows you to see things coming before they happen, and also to have the right level of conjecture when walking in and seeing systems presented before you, education or large scale business or.
Right. And you know, like, and I hope the audience sees that this brother is at an exceptionally high intellectual level. He's very well read, very well studied, and that he knows his stuff. But and which is nothing like, you know, that's respect, my brother,
I
because
appreciate you.
you know your stuff. And but what I'm gonna say for our people here is, today when we have a conversation, instead of Dr. Willis, we want Jason.
Oh,
We
you
don't
want
have
Jay Will?
We want Jay
All
Will.
right.
So we want Jay Will as we have this conversation. So
All right.
and so people understand. And I'm going to ask this question, right? Because I want people to understand this. What's
Yeah.
the difference between Dr. Jason B. Willis and Jay Will? So what's the difference between those two people? Because they're one and the same, and there's time and a place for all of it. And I try to get people to understand that as well. You know what? And that's how some things that we have to do to walk in certain lanes, and to so that, you know, everybody can understand this and be able to adapt to situations, but still doing it with our authentic selves.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between Jay Will and Dr. Willis?
Young Jay Will carried a lot more ego, and that was the thing through the identity hunt that you figure out, and try to identify ways to be humble. Um, older Jay will do a little bit more playing fool to gain wise, really having understanding across multiple fields, but trying to get a read on energy. I think for me, Doc Willis is concerned with demonstrating that he is prepared, because I don't, I have to do a lot in order to be validated, even with the title of doctor. But
Amen.
I would say, regular Jay Will is just the son of his mother and father. Like, I'm completely immersed with African American vernacular English. I'm gonna be fine if I'm on Avenue D in Conkey or if I'm on pick one, right? And at the same time, I think that, Dr. Willis and Jay Will are really one and the same. And we talk about life, having to wear different masks. And I think that, maybe I have an opportunity to wear a few more in a few different spaces to help bring, the level of agency and advocacy you need for young people when they're not in your space. Third grader doesn't really know how to get into a boardroom and talk people down about how they move bread or how they deal with each other, or why it's important not to harm the child prior to giving the child like the humanistic experience of seeing them and validating them in real time, like cultural response and pedagogy and practice. And so depending on where I am and depending on, like, nobody even calls me Jason. If you call me Jason, I know you probably only know me from some government paper, right? And based on where people call me, then I know where you know me from. So I think that there's that very real kind of being, a sponge at this thing of life. And when, the only seeds I'm sowing are really trying to sow seeds of love, because I think that that's really the one thing that combats violence, and to be able to love people in different ways that are meaningful for them, not just meaningful for me, creates that relational capacity. And so we can go to the next layer of relationship building. And, it's loyalty over everything. The code of the streets really works from some foundational code stuff, but I think that it doesn't work from an actionable solution aspect,
Right.
right? Watch your
And
mouth, mind your business, stuff like that still is a thing.
right. And see, for me, I've had to learn, the difference between Paul and Doc Miller is similar. Like everything that you're saying, for certain arenas, we have to prove ourselves, even though you have the title of doctor. And when you walk in, because of the color of our skin or where we're from, we have to represent in a way that we have to know stuff at a deeper level to even be accepted in certain circles. And the one good thing is that it does open doors to those circles, but then it's walking through. And then what I find is that, even though when I walk in those circles as Dr. Miller, I still am Paul, and they have, and what's interesting is
You take, we speak at 100, you still are black. Let's
yeah, and they
take
have
the
a very
ball.
difficult time with Paul. A lot of circles, I have a very difficult time with Paul, and accepting that Paul is Dr. Miller, and so they have a very difficult time with that. You know, and I got an example. Like I was and even I went to the doctor's office. It was maybe about a month ago for my back, and so I wanted to get seen because I'm having some lower back issues, and I
That's a
went to go
lot
see
of
a
praise that
specialist.
comes.
I went to go see a specialist, right? And the specialist, they wouldn't allow me to see the specialist. They want me to see a physician assistant. And so my argument is that if I'm paying for this, I should be able to see the specialist, not somebody who knows less than the specialist. And no disrespect to them, but that's not who I want to see. And they were talking to me like I didn't have, like I didn't have the right to say that. And then I said, oh, yes. And by the way, it's Dr. Miller, by the way. And then she had the nerve to say, well, what kind of doctor are you? And then I said, the doctor that earned it. And then she decided to address and talk to me differently. But it's just crazy in the different circles and cycles and thinking about that and how people still, and you still get treated, and it makes people very uncomfortable in times. But the goal that I found is and what I love to be able to do is still bring myself and bring authenticity to that. And when people don't know what to do with it, I kind of get a kick out of it. So that I appreciate it.
So that part we really have a lot of overlap. Like there's not going to be a quiet elevator ride with me. I don't care where we are, what we got going on. But I do live what I would consider a significant portion of my life kind of knocking down stereotypes. At the same time, I really, unless we're working in the field that I work, or we're doing something that's germane to like the professional field. I mean, the only people that call me like doc are the people that just kind of know me and like want to respect the title because they understand what it took to get a PhD, and I say that, I just want to, full research degree, when it's chi-square analysis and multiple regression and plot, and you got to actually learn it yourself. And I write my own surveys and I do my own, like everything I do is like making a home course meal. And so that's why my program is different, because you don't lose any human capital from the seedling of the idea to the facilitation of that final, product. I've been blessed to be able to think on a large scale while also pay attention to people's feelings, as everybody wants to be validated. The one thing that when it comes to kids and agency and advocacy, larger systems, unfortunately, are going to see me as probably a little unpredictable, because I'm not motivated by many things that other people are motivated by. And so I think sometimes, go ahead.
So I got a whole another rabbit hole to take you down for a second.
Sure.
And I'm so off the regular topic of but we're gonna get to all that stuff.
We had some questions, but it's all
we're
right.
gonna dig into your story in a second.
You said it's P and J right now.
Yes, yeah. So
yeah.
So as everybody's listening, right, and they hear J. Will, they hear Dr. Willis speak, and they heard him drop some of his credentials. Let me paint a background for a second and say that Rochester, for those of you who don't know, and we're both from here, right? Rochester is is usually like the third poorest city in the country. It's the highest murder rates per capita. There was just 6 murders last weekend, right? So there was all in the span of 24 hours.
That you got a national expert in violence prevention and intervention work that had a White House paper done within the last calendar year.
And they're not asking you what to do. So we're going to go to that because there's problems with our local government. And we could talk about that too, because I don't really hold back. And then, so all these things. I also heard this brother say that he has degrees in educational administration and some other things. The school district in Rochester is 646 out of 646 in New York State. It's one of the lowest performing in the country. Dr. Willis has the knowledge and ability to I would say, to and enough hometown knowledge to potentially help and provide some solutions to that educational problem. Even though his specialty area is violence prevention, he still has this background in education. So if you were Super Nintendo, if they came calling, they asked you to be the superintendent, which they're probably not going to call you or I, even though it's interesting why not, but they won't. And we could talk about that too. What would you do? What would you do to create sustainable change?
Immediately?
What would you in about 2 or 3 minutes? Because it's a big problem,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
would you quick? And I'll tell you, if you show me yours, I'll show you mine. All right? I
No
got sent
Diddy.
home for
No Diddy.
no Diddy. But I
Right.
got sent home for a
So
kindergarten
mine is real
because
easy.
I've always been
Mine is real easy. I mean, this
right.
is, for me, it seems rudimentary.
Right.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that it's public knowledge that the school board, I think within the last 48 hours, just approved $1 billion budget. I think you just articulated that you have some data that we're 646 out of 646.
Spending when you break all their breakdowns, they're spending about $40,000 a child. When you break down all of
So
the
so let me get
numbers.
away. I'm in a unique position here, so I don't want to throw shade, but I want to be really acute and accurate with what I say, and intentional with how I say it.
Right.
So
What would you do?
my
You can throw
immediate
shade. You're from the gutter to greatness.
in the door solution for any school district, right, that wants to have, you must have, can you hear me? Is that you must have horizontal and vertical alignment. It is paramount. It might be numero uno. If I can go through it to a third grade school and I walk in that class and I go to a separate building and they're not even using the same curriculum, not that they're not on the same week in the pacing chart, right? Week 14, you're in week 15, you're in week 13, you're in week 18. We need to modify and create this overlap so that we can account for this difference. No, they're not even using the same work. So now when it comes to state tests, what are we doing, right? And vertical alignment is the same thing, but just kind of standing on its head. If my sixth grade stuff doesn't build on my fifth grade, that built on my fourth grade, that built on my third grade, then what am I doing at each level? So every level the kid goes up, they might be functioning totally autonomously from any other curriculum scaffold that's in the district. So how does this game of Jenga ever match up? And then as a result of COVID, which is a really unique situation, but doesn't have to have these long-term results, is teachers don't want to be evaluated and students don't want to take tests. So if you don't have a baseline norm test to take, and you don't have evaluation for teachers and instructors of records, right? The best teachers, the teachers that test and evaluate the best, should work with what? The students who need the most amount of help. Absolutely. Not the best teachers should work with the AP kids.
No.
This is obtuse. And so these philosophies and these ways, and I'm not blaming the RTA or RCSD or school districts in general. This isn't just germane to what they got going on, is that you really don't believe and want to teach the kids in a way that is going to leave them competitive, especially in marginalized communities. We see it over and over and over again. And it's not a charter school thing or a public school thing. No. It simply is, how is it that you facilitate the process of education for young people in America?
Right. And so, and I definitely think that the alignments would be supportive and helpful to doing this. So y'all hear this, y'all hear that you have an expert here in your own community that potentially could help move the needle, and people aren't calling on them. So
let's take the potential out, because there's many programs in this community that people still use that I created.
Right. And I respect that. And potential is my way of being humble to try to get people to listen. But I agree with you.
ICE project at East.
Right.
Right. And so I'm the one that created the survey, pulled the school, chose the people, chose the, individual who painted the work, so on and so forth. I got a wheelchair program at School 28. It started with one Somalian kid that was laying in a Chuck E. Cheese ball, like kiddie pool, that they said couldn't get a wheelchair because his body didn't contort in the ways that made it sustainable for him to have a
Right.
wheelchair. And then I partnered with Endless Highways and Rob Tortala, who's an amazing gem in our community. And so not only did that individual through Monroe wheelchair was able to get a wheelchair that fit his needs, right? Every child in that school has a wheelchair that fits their needs.
And you know
Think
why I
about that,
say
right?
you,
And
you know what?
now they have able-bodied gym programs. So like
Right.
kids that wouldn't even understand, that might be like the kids that bully, now understand what it takes to be able to play basketball in gym and wheel a chair around and still make it in the hoop and so on and so forth. So it
Right.
creates a really wonderful level of like humanity and parity. And there's other programs too. You know, we got kids scholarships at Garth Fagan for
But
kids.
Jay, you know why I said potential? Not
Yeah.
because there's a lack of, I think, your ability. The potential comes because the systems are set up for the people who come in to fail, and their systems are set up in a way that it's designed to currently the way it's set up, it's designed to kibosh things that could be successful. So that's why I said potential, because whoever comes in, even with enormous ability, there's going to be these huge obstacles. And that's what, so some of my, like if I briefly, like just touching on what my solution would be, and I'll paint some context for the audience, for people who don't know my story. I have been in education about 25 years. I ran a few schools, and I was the CEO and principal there, where they were 97% Black and brown young men and 90% poverty, but we averaged a 95% graduation rate every year, 100% acceptance to college, and millions of dollars in scholarship money. So one thing that I do is I build systems that work, and I build systems for kids that look like us. And so with that being said, if I was going to build a system that worked for the Rochester City School District, I would my first and foremost priority would be to redesign to create autonomous schools. So there would still be an umbrella of an overarching larger district that would still be on this umbrella, but underneath the umbrella, each school would be autonomous, would still have to answer to certain things, but would be autonomous. So with autonomy comes this leader would have greater accountability and greater responsibility. And so we know that good leadership can change everything. And so and then the goal would be is to train the leader within the systems. And so we don't have the time to go into what the systems look like. And we could talk about that another time or another episode, but train them in the systems. And the systems would be vertically and horizontally aligned, and they would be the same within these buildings. And then people who weren't accountable wouldn't stay there, and they wouldn't be able to continue doing what they're doing. So I would also cut out the people who aren't really doing the work and make it so that it's about improvement and systems and kids and not about adults. And so we would actually change the things that need to be changed, build systems that work, and do it on. And I've even said to them, give me your 10 lowest performing schools and I'll do the first one for free. And I guarantee you that we could turn around as long as I got two things. Give me a leader that is willing, and give me the opportunity to remove some of the bureaucracy and red tape. And so when I say that, my last stipulation, because there's been people who have called me and contacted me a little bit and some conversation, and they haven't continued the conversation because I said they're going to have to agree to my one term, and it is not even about financial, because that is what it is, right? So for me, it's not even, and that's not even what motivates me.
But I would do the job to have the opportunity for my nieces and nephews are in the school. I'll do the job for a portion of the money.
So for the change, right? For the change, and be careful what you say. But for the change, because I ain't doing it for the portion. But I'm not. I'm not, because I know what I'm gonna have to go through. But at the same time, what I will tell you is that it's not about that for me. What it is about to me is that I would need, and here's what I would need them to agree to, because the majority of the problems has come down to, a lot of it come down to the board. And so when I say the board, my standpoint is, and I put it out there, I speak it. My standpoint is, if they're interested in ever me bringing the brand of change that I know can change this, I would ask them to respectfully and humbly allow me to operate, and they govern. So make sure that I do my job, do everything that you're responsible to do as fiduciaries. They're never going to agree to this, right? But operation and telling me how to do my job, I don't need that. And then what I need from you is support so that I can actually get the job done, and I can fight with who I got to fight with to make the changes. And I need that, or I can't do it. And I'll give you an example real quick. So my thought process, the way I look at this, Jay, is that if I was a heart surgeon, right? And let's say you were a board member on, and you had never been a heart surgeon, and you were, as a board member for the hospital, let's say you were a person who worked
was the
in,
highest level grant manager, and I could get the bread.
you did grants, or there was somebody who worked in non-for-profits, but you had no clue about heart surgery, right? Or potentially you may not even have degrees yet, whatever it is, because there's different levels on the school board. This is no shot to anybody, but this is just saying what it is if you were that was your background, and I was a heart surgeon, and I was the best heart surgeon in the country, why would you tell me how to perform surgery? Like, why would you tell me when and how to perform surgery if you never went to medical school, if you never performed heart surgery?
But when they need surgery, they call you. So I'll give you a very pared down example, right? Like, I've been asked to come to a school, right? And you might have an auditorium full of sixth graders. Teachers come in, try to quiet them down, nobody. Superintendent, deputy superintendents try to quiet them down, nobody. Somebody walk down the aisle, pass me a microphone, be like, "Do you think you can get them to quiet down?" "Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll take that." You want to see this done in real time, right? The heart surgery part, right? Because I do this. It's not like you show me 20 jits that you brought on, and I'll show you 2,000, right? I'll show you ones that we cry, we laugh, we still build. You know what I'm saying? I kiss their babies on the forehead and just, love them up and send them shout outs and do the back end stuff. And so, when I get to the microphone, I might just say something like, "Yo, young people, I'm trying to give you a bag." Right? Because I got a full level of immersion. I know what's catchy right now. I know what's going to hit them, you know what I'm saying, and cognitively move the needle. Wait, what's this dude in the suit talking about a bag? Hold up. Right? Now I got you locked in, but I can't give you no bag until you respect these people on the mic. Right? So here's where you take the teaching and learning. You lock into what they know, right? Culture, responsive pedagogy, and practice. And you immediately build the scaffold. Even if it's a discipline scaffold, they can understand that our young people are brilliant, but they're doctors right now, but they're doctors of energy, because they've had to use that spidey sense in order to be able to make, create, take form, and take heed to the things that are meaningful in their sphere of influence, right? And so all that stuff is really that's the art that we have with a full layer of immersion, but that's not one that's often saluted in Eurocentric paradigms. It's just, that's the bottom line.
And that's part of the problem. And that's part of the problem why we have all these systems that don't work, and we have people leading them who don't know how to make them work and don't have any connection to our kids and our community. And so it needs to change.
Let me just share this other piece. Large scale systems are always going to have what I call, quote unquote, the blockers in place. So there's going to be somebody in procurement. There's going to be somebody in grants. There's going to be somebody, right? And they're going to, for whatever interest they have, they're going to be interested in everything that comes across, right, the table. So I think that's extremely important to understand, that you might not always know who's who. And so when I've had opportunities, for example, somebody might be like, "Hey, you walked into a position. I need you to read back 1 year on the FS10 to see what's going on." Well, okay, I might read 1 year, but I might read 10 years worth of FS10s across all of the disciplines, because I want to see the CBOs that keep getting repeated. I want to see where the flow of interest is. And that's the researcher in me, right? Because I got the title of Dr. Willis and I was hired into this position is why I have access now. But now I can utilize that to see a bigger picture. And that's the picture that they don't really want you vested in.
Right, and they don't want it because it's going to create change, and the change is going to be uncomfortable, especially for adults that aren't doing their job. And there's going to be adults who don't have their job because they are not doing what they're supposed to do, and so that's why they don't want it. So, and that's why they're not allowing to
And
have
could
it.
get in trouble too.
And that's why also when you talk about the city government and locals, when they have a violent prevention expert but have 6 homicides in the matter of 24 hours, and they don't call on you because they don't want you to unearth or dig into, or a lot of them is still about their egos, and it's about how do I remain in office, how do I continue to do what I'm doing, and how do I make sure that I'm not exposed for things that could really help or change. And so, and that's what kills me about our city, is because there's a lot of people that talk about it, but they don't want to be about it. And when they got people in front of them who can be about it, there's a lot done to keep them away from those positions and those spots where they can actually do something to create this change, because they really don't want it in the first place. Because of the mindset and the cycle of poverty that is in this city, and the mindset has developed through all different layers, a crab in a bucket mentality. There's a lot of people who don't want to see somebody rise to the top, and I don't care about rising to the top for accolades or for all that. I care about rising to the top so I can create change and do things differently, because I'm in a position where you don't have a choice but to listen. And so it becomes very interesting around here. But all of that being said, I go back to where it all started for J. Will. Tell us about your gut of the greatness, man. Like with the understanding of like where you grew up at, what streets, what it looked like. You lost your parents, everything you had to go through, and what kind of mindset did that create for you? And just kind of lead us down there for a few minutes.
Yeah, so my mom was a boardwalk baby, Jersey girl, German and English. My dad, African American, Native American, Cherokee to be exact. My granddad was a sharecropper, Cleveland, Mississippi. My dad picked cotton. My dad picked cotton till third grade, where he dropped out of school. My family was really good at singing and was really into the church. And so that was a natural progression for him. They were doing really good. He was doing really good in terms of like him and his brothers. And they were getting ready to get signed by Motown. My uncle, who was the lead singer, ended up getting a rare form of skin cancer back in the mid 70s. And it cost him his life. And it was extremely rare, not just in terms of what form he got, but also to have that as a black man. And so that was hard for the family, certainly hard for my dad. At that time, he met my mom in San Francisco. My family story is real unique because we don't get off the plantation unless Governor George Wallace for Alabama gives my family a pardon. He had a valid relationship in my family. It wasn't as if he was raping into my family, but he had a valid relationship. And so he was the one that got my family, my grandmom and her sister, off of the plantation and sent them to Rochester, New York, where our family house still is, over there in the Genesee and Sawyer area. So, I'm born on Post in Ravenwood. I grew up on Thurston. Um, you know, One thing that I thought was really shapely for me and for my parents were really thoughtful about giving me the bandwidth to protect myself in the absence of having them there. And they always told me I had the best of both worlds. So even though I didn't know what it meant back then, and I knew it wasn't a Jay-Z and R. Kelly album forthcoming, I really knew that even though they might not see the German and English guy, nobody's better than me. Even if they only see an African American guy, nobody's better than me, right? I'm the same as the quadriplegic on the street, right? I'm the same breath of life, the same grain of sand, um, the same extension of God's will. And so it allows me to really cherish relationships and relational capacities with people. It certainly allows me to be a better dad, uh, and a better friend and a better man, and to hold myself to something that's, outside of this reality. I think God is really an important piece to all this. So I'd be remiss to go anywhere else to say, like, really early on, that foundation of the highest power, Allah, Yahweh, God, if it's one, it's the same name. And so I don't care if you're reading the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, There's so many messages in those books that allow for you to understand that there is a way to live this life,
Right.
and that you need to be conscious of that, or, you know, whatever karma, yin yang, the universal laws and truths will be on your back a little bit more. So, you know, the road less traveled is always more lonely. I
Right.
learned that very early.
With all that being said, and you grew up on the west side of the city. I grew up on the east side of the city, Hudson and Joseph Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph World, right, Seneca Manor Boy,
Mm-hmm.
and
You
and
know, at that age, bro, you don't know you poor.
no,
I
right,
don't know why I'm standing in line at pantries getting food. I just know they handing out food and we get food at the
right,
pantry.
and
I
you're
don't know
getting
about government cheese. I just know that this is the cheese we cut off the block and this the way we make it taste good. Like, I don't really know about all that. So
what were some of the experiences that molded and shaped you in the way that you think as you were growing up there on the west side of the city? See, I grew up. I went to school 19, so the Magnolia right there. So I ain't oblivious to the west side. So I
yeah,
say
no,
all
I
that
don't.
to
And
say,
at that point, I don't even think it's at that age, 5, 6, 7, 8, East Side, West Side, we're oblivious to what they got going on, right? But we know that we got to be careful when we walk to the store. Like, we know we got to be careful when we ride our bikes. We know that we can feel the protection of those people that love us, and kind of like having those extra sets of eyes for us. And so we don't always see the danger. Sometimes we hear the danger, but we don't even know, like those are shots versus firecrackers. Like,
see, but think about that, what you said though. See, for me, I think I did recognize it a little bit because like I was, even though I was from the east, I was from the east side, and so even at an early age, everything on the east side. But then my mother, second grade, dropped me at 19, and and so when I got dropped there, now even though I'm from the
right, you
east
ain't
side,
riding the
even though I'm
same
young,
bus and kids.
now I'm getting on the west side, and I'm dropped in the middle of G Boys and Black Mob. I'm dropped in the
Yeah.
middle of it
Yeah,
was
and you was coming up during that time too, so that was definitely
in a different in a different sector where like I had to figure out and realize that even where I grew up on the east side, it was just different, and it was
yeah.
different from. But I quickly was able to see that and learn, and it gave me experience and exposure to even though in the same city was a different culture.
Yeah, so
And,
I'm a little bit reverse. So we did like the HGTV thing in my family. We got the small house out in Penfield. I could have went to East Penfield or Brighton, but Penfield Elementary School was closest, and so that's what my mom was on. And so like in 86, 87, I came over like second, third grade. So my whole upbringing was, you know, being the one kid or the one of three kids that was right, and really learning this Eurocentric system and standard American English, and really having like identity. Like, this ain't that, but this ain't also like time to act like MC Hammer, and like all these guys that are covered up during my era and stuff. So like, the identity struggle was real. And really figuring out how to navigate systems safely out that way was real. Passive aggressiveness was still alive back then, right?
absolutely.
People trying to spite you or people trying to make an example of you was still alive back then. But the one thing that was really powerful for me is I had a really healthy dose of love and discipline in the home.
Right.
And
Now,
so I had to answer to what was going on at the crib way before I had to worry about some teachers or something. And so
now
that's what allowed me to kind of weave some of that stuff, while at the same time processing it, right? Because it's different. My dad was always real clear about like taking us on the weekends back to Genesee and Sawyer and be like, "Yo, that's your nephew and that's your cousin," and like look him in the face and hug him. Did you know that's your sister's daughter? Like, you need to show her love. Like, he was real intentional about that, and I respect that to the fullest, and still carry out some of those ways with my daughters, just making sure that they're around family, because in our communities, it's family over everything. And
right.
so that bloodline thing is real, and is paramount.
Right.
Like, I go a lot of ways and do a lot of things for a lot of people, but I do a little bit more for family.
What I hear is, so I hear a young man that was able to see both sides of the coin, was able to see and have immersed in the very urban city life, very impoverished area, then also had some experience in more of a suburban area, and also was trying to figure out who he was and where did you fit into it all, developing your own identity. And so going through the experience you did, what type of did it create or cause any type of trauma for you? And if so, what did that look like?
My trauma was probably based in ego. And so that's why humility is so important. That's why I can, you know, you said you kind of G-checked the lady at the place, like it's Dr. Miller. Like I don't even got time for like
Yeah.
and I respect it. I've been wound
Yeah.
up
And I
about
don't
you,
do that
right?
often. You know
No,
I don't
and
talk to folks like that.
I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting you do. I know you carry yourself with the highest level of character and class.
Yeah, I don't do
I
that
know
often.
you. But I say that to say, uh, yeah, I think I just work hard now, putting space from ego. I don't think that yielded me the type of boomerang effect
Right.
that I would want to have. But I always thought that I needed that as a young man, identity wise, because that's the vision of what I saw. Right, that's what's in the media. That's what's in the, and young man, looking at my dad who's got a third grade education and heavy in the church. There was like a whole 1 second that I probably thought I was smarter than him. Um, until I realized I wasn't. And then, he was like one of my greatest teachers throughout my life's arc. So, um,
What do you think?
Doctor, go ahead.
What did you need to heal? So what? So as I hear, based on how you grew up, and again, trying to synthesize for the people who are listening, is
Sure.
that what I hear from you is that the way you grew up and some of the being immersed in between worlds, even growing up in a multiracial family, trying to figure out
Mhm.
who you are, that developed a need that you believed at some point in time that you had to lead with ego. And then as you have matured and gotten older, you've seen that that was more of trauma speaking than it was what you actually needed to lead with.
Yeah.
What
So
created the
I
healing?
switched it.
What was
I
the
needed.
pivot?
I used to need validation, right? I used to look for validation through other people, through other things, right? And then as I worked on my art, and God bless the dead, Dr. Thomas C. Calhoun, my mentor, originally in Southern Illinois, and then on to Jackson State University, um, allowed me to believe in myself. And so I, instead of seeking validity from other people's situation and experience, for me, it was, how can I use that same energy and repurpose it and use my first name to bring honor to my last now that I lost my crib, right? And now that I need to be an example of what I want my daughters to see when I hit adversity. Did daddy, fold and what I'm saying, get in the fetal position, or did he fight his way out of the corner when his back was against the wall? When they see, I've never been fired for the nature of my work. I've never been let go because I didn't do a
Right.
quality of work that was exemplar. I've never been let go because I'm late. I've never been let go, right? The only thing that they just write me out of a position as if it never happened. So like, I don't need validity from everybody. You know, I can get a lot out of the little bit that comes out of the rag, the sponge, the few messages that I get from my young kings and queens that are all over that say, "Yo, Doc, you changed my life. I'm thankful for you. Like, how you doing?" Da, 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 da. I think that that's what motivates me. And it seems like God is always gonna Allah's gonna always allow those messages to surface at the right time when your spirit really needs them. Um,
And what did you what emotions or are I know often as black males we were taught not to deal in emotions. What emotions and what level of vulnerability did you have to deal in to realize that you had to make some changes so that you could heal and shift into more of your greatness?
you know, I, to be honest with you, I've always been vulnerable. Like, I've always had passionate eyes. I've been in
Right.
full, been on stage, and like the tears are moving down the face, but I'm still talking and doing my professional development. But you know, the more cognitively aware you are, I'm thinking about how my mom and dad are loving me. I know the material, I know the work. So like, I could be in that watershed moment between my ears and those folks don't know. Yeah, I'll break it down for them and I'll create like a professional platform to say, hey, these are passionate eyes and here's the derivative of this, that, and the third, and shape some of that for them. But like, I've always been that guy that's been a little bit more locked into my vulnerabilities. And my mom was really big in that way, just holding me accountable. Dad was really, Dad G checked you with that Bible and that belt. And my mom was real crafty with how she challenged you and called you on your stuff, while simultaneously just loving you, just core love, like crazy. So yeah, I always been, energy wise, which has allowed me to navigate and see some amazing things. I've been all around the world. I've had so many great experiences. I've been homeless and I've been flush. I've been up, I've been down, and I'm
What
just thankful,
what
bro.
what was that pivotal moment, or was it a moment, or was it a person that made you relinquish and drop the ego, and created the change for you that you needed?
Mm, in this thing called life, man, I want to make a better version of myself every day. So if I see something constantly popping up as a hurdle or a challenge, and it's something that I have control over, then it's incumbent upon me to do something about it. And so some of it was a real natural growth. Um, you can't have ego in that. You know what I'm saying? You lose your mom. What's the point of having ego in that? You lose your dad, two
Right.
sisters, no living grandparent. Like, I've seen so many transitions. I've seen real pain. But one thing that always helped me through those times was a quote that I heard that says, to grieve deeply is to have love completely. And like, so what a blessing it is that I've been able to love somebody or be loved by somebody that much, that I'm able to go to these dark places or these really heavy places or vulnerable places. That's a blessing. A lot of people might not have had relationship in their whole life that is that meaningful, and I've had so many. So there's some people that believe there's no yesterday and there's no tomorrow. There's only right now. And so in terms of like being present, I'm really present in the right now. I love people in the right now. I don't, I'm accountable, when I lay my head to rest at night, that I did something today to make a better version of myself tomorrow. And I sleep real good. I don't dream a lot.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely. I think out of all that, what I heard, and what is that you decided you needed to self-regulate, and you were self-aware, and you were
Yeah,
able.
yeah. I think
You
it was
were
the aware, like you have trials and errors with that, right? And let's be clear, like as young people, the science of the brain of children, men don't turn into actual men, mind, body, and spirit 26 to 28. So we need to like dismember this idea that young people are grown at 18. They're not, right? You could just look at their prefrontal cortex and check their development. You don't have to take my word on it. Like, it's the science of people, humans in general. Ladies catch it a little bit early. We need to protect our young people, especially in their 20s, so they can grow to 28 and have some type of bandwidth. You do know that, like crime and violence, there is no demographic, there is no category that makes anybody more or less likely to commit murder after age like 35, 36, because everybody realizes like life is precious and they're on the other side of that normal curve. So
right.
let's really work with young people till they're at 30. Like, this is real simple. Like, work with them until they're 36, and then the natural laws of life will take over, right? Like, see them through this difficult time period. But we do know there's large scale systems and things like that. But I'm saying, if you just talk about like core education, you could change the whole generation in 8 years. You don't need 20 years. People think you need 20 years. You don't need 20 years. You
Right. No.
you got the kids that are in eighth grade. They're going to be gone in 4 years.
Right.
So either you did or didn't do the intervention work that was necessary. And then the pre-K kids go 8. You work with them to change their mind state, and then that's the benchmark, right? And some of those kids will need smaller levels of intervention work, maybe those 6th through 8th graders, but certainly with capable people like you and I and some others in this space, we can do it. So I blow a lot of people's myths up. They want it to be 20 years so they can keep the same system, so they can keep making money, so they can keep doing whatever it is they're doing, or get to their retirement, or like whatever it
And
is.
that's what I hear is for somebody. I'm just waiting for them to retire, but that's a whole nother conversation, right? So if you had to give three things in about 60 seconds or less, if you have to give three things that somebody could use based off of Jay Will's life and based off your experience and based off of how you shifted from whatever gutter you were at to greatness, what would those three things be that somebody could use as takeaways to go from their gutter to their greatness?
Use your first name to bring honor to your last name. Um, Tell people that you do love, that you love them early and often. Think before you speak.
That's important. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Any parting or closing words, or want to tell anybody, and again, limited amount of time, but anything that you got going on that you want everybody to know about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're vested in this work, you represent some type of professional platform or personal platform where, violence prevention, education, cultural responsive pedagogy and practice are things that you think are tools that could be utilized in your space. Doesn't matter if you're a community-based organization, you can certainly reach out to Doc, myself. There's a lot of things going on. And I think sometimes it's just good to hear refreshing ideas about ways in which you can make um, changes and affect quality control in a lot of spaces. And so, I've lived this life work. I'm not here to kind of like toot my own horn, but I am capable of thinking out loud, thinking outside the box, or thinking inside the box. You know,
Right.
most importantly, you know, I'm in the town. I love the 585. Like my whole family here, my nieces and nephews are in these schools, and so if it's not me, we still got to get it right. So if I'm not
Right.
on the front lines, I'll be on the front lines. It is what it is. This is tough stuff, but man, we just passed $1 billion budget, man. We look crazy being 646 out of 646 with $1 billion budget. A
Yeah,
billion,
one of the highest per
billion,
capita spends in the country.
a
But
billion,
I want to thank you for
a
coming on
billion.
today. My guy, Dr. Jason Willis, Jay Will. I want to thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you, and we always end with like a mindfulness minute. And for me, I think you said a lot of important things today. But as people are listening, if there was some things to take away from here, I think really it's about actualization. And the title of today's show was Know Thyself and Be True, write your own history, right? And so if you want your first name to represent your last name, how are you going to write that history? And what Jay Willis said is that first he had to realize what he was doing and how he was in his own way at times, and what kind of situations was it creating. But he had enough ability to self-actualize, he had enough ability to self-reflect, and then he had enough ability to work towards changing it. You have that same ability. You just have to ground yourself enough and remove some of your ego to be able to do that. And so, thinking about all of the things that you have going on, good and bad, think about what's your responsibility in that. What are you doing to add or cause that situation to not go exactly the way you want it to? And how can you reflect enough to change it? And so, when you change it, and you work towards it, you're practicing a new habit, new ritual routine. That's how you start to move towards shifting in from your gutter to your greatness. And so, as I always say, continue to be greater later. I appreciate y'all for listening. Please continue to stay with us. Until next time, this has been another episode from the Gutter to Greatness.